Our next speaker, Tracey, comes from the fat bulge on the right, just above it, a place called Brisbane. She is the Executive Director of a business called Amovita. They specialise in excellence in all sorts of things. I'm sure you'll enjoy Tracey's presentation. Thanks.
I guess, like all the speakers have said, can't see anybody down there, so hopefully if you want to interrupt me with anything or add anything, please just jump up and down. I'd like to start off by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land upon which we're meeting and elders past, present and future. The other thing is that I'd like to say, being a Tassie girl, it's really, really lovely coming home. And even though I left the Apple Isle 12 years ago via Sydney for a fantastic job that I went to there, going to Brisbane is a beautiful place to live, but also coming home is even sweeter. So thank you for having me. I'd like to bring to you today a presentation, like I guess Andrew was saying, it's for a third party. It's a project that Amovita's been involved in over the last 6 months, and I'd like to share the story of focal community living. It's an organisation in Brisbane that is moving towards the NDIS, and so today's presentation is going to be a bit about where the organisation's come from, where it is at the moment and where it's going to. I really liked what Flick said yesterday, and that was do nothing about them without them. And that's exactly the mantra of this wonderful organisation in Queensland that supports young people and adults that are experiencing a disability. So this is their story for them. This is a picture of Ipswich, in downtown Ipswich in Queensland, in Brisbane. It's about an hour's drive from the centre of Brisbane inland, and we've been working with this organisation for about 3 years. We do a whole range of things with them, and they asked us as external consultants to come in and support them to transition to the NDIS, because as we've talked about over this conference, most of us are still very unsure, confused and not sure about what's going to happen under the NDIS. This organisation decided that they were really going to live by Henry Ford, which I've got a slide about, to actually just head into the unknown and plan it as well as what they can and see what comes out the other end. This is also downtown Ipswich with their beautiful buildings, and this little town or city, I was looking up their population last night, which I can't find. I think they have about 90,000 people in this little town, so a little bit bigger than Launceston in terms of population. In terms of the NDIS trial sites, they're slowly rolling out in Queensland, and Tasmania's well ahead of the game. In Queensland, we're only rolling out 3 trial sites in very, very far North Queensland, with about 1,600 participants in that program, which started in January. Okay, anybody know anything about the Google Driverless Car? You'll have to yell out because I can't see anybody. Anybody know about the Google Driverless Car? Okay, well, Google have actually started a prototype with a car that they've programmed particular things into its memory so it can avoid crashes, it can go around different cones and bike riders on the road, etc. And I guess this organisation, this picture came from the CEO of Focal, because she's been travelling around the globe last year to all sorts of conferences with the NDIS to kind of find out new information that she could bring back to this organisation in Queensland. And one of the things that she found, which we've got a picture shortly of her travelling around Vancouver in Canada, was the Google Driverless Car. Now, she used this metaphor really usefully with her staff, because it was a metaphor that we don't know what's going to happen in the future. And the NDIS is quite a tricky space for all of us moving into the future. And so sometimes we've got to just trust that by the time we get there, that there is certainly going to be something innovative and creative to come out of that process. Focal has a 40-year history, and I guess this organisation came about because a huge number of people came from the Challinor Centre, which is the picture you see on your screen, into the community. And it was very, very difficult to actually support some of the people that were transitioning from this institution into the community. And so Focal was born with a large group of families, carers and friends that decided they were going to start a support group, and so named it Focal. And this organisation now has grown, and it's just celebrated its 40th year, which is very exciting. It's recognised as a leader in the Queensland community, and I guess the reason is, or people ask why, and it's exactly as some of our speakers have talked about. It's for the participants or the people that access Focal, and nothing is done in that organisation without those participants. And so part of this program and project that we've been doing with Focal has been about sitting with the participants, the families and the carers to find out exactly what they would like moving into the NDIS. So you can see on the screen the 40 years of Focal celebration. And the bottom right-hand corner is one of the team leaders, Anthony, with some of the participants of the Focal community. This picture is, of course, of some of the wonderful participants that they support through a range of programs in the community. And you can see there Sonia in the dark black top working with some of the kids. Focal is really, really well known, and they've worked really, really hard to actually be known in the community. Yet interestingly, when we held some recent consultations to look at how the organisation was going to move into NDIS, the surprising thing that we found was that many organisations didn't know them at all very well, and that's really because of their size. They have about 80 casual staff and a small team in their leadership team. And as you can see here, it's some of the coordinators with the local mayor, who's absolutely passionate about this organisation and fundraisers for them all the time. As I said, Sonia has been working really, really hard as CEO to get as much information as possible. And one of the conferences that she went to late last year was in Vancouver. And we were really hoping from that conference, being international, that she would come back with a whole range of information that we could actually import into the program and project towards NDIS. The great thing was she came back with nothing new. Now, why would we say that that's great news? Because it means that even internationally, with some of the countries and places that have progressed towards a different way of working with people that have challenging situations with disabilities, that we're kind of in the same boat, that not a lot of new information is known at some of these conferences about how to move towards the NDIS. So despite her being a little bit frustrated about not getting new information, she was actually quite happy that she could come back into the organisation and that she could really design with her organisation a new way to move forward towards the NDIS. She felt it was a really rare opportunity to kind of create it with her board in a way that wasn't going to be dictated by, I guess, some of the international research. So for her, that was quite exciting. One of the mantras at Focal that we have done the whole way through this project is to lead with the heart and to balance the head and the heart. Now, as we have all talked about over the last day and a bit, the NDIS is taking organisations to a market-driven approach. And what we've done is worked really, really hard with the staff to help them to wrap their head around what that means. Because for staff moving towards NDIS, it's going to mean a whole different way of thinking and working. So I guess one of the taglines that Focal is moving towards is to balance the head and the heart, and to absolutely put the client, the consumer, the customer, whatever language that organisations are going to move forward with, right at the centre of anything that they do. And that's exactly what Focal's going to do. So, as we know, market-driven economy or a market-driven service in terms of how participants under the NDIS are going to receive services. And what Focal have found through the consultation process is that the participants really love what they're offered. But what came out of the consultation process, which I'll talk a little bit more in detail shortly, is that they actually wanted different things as well. And so a lot of the participants, and for us it's quite a struggle, in terms of what Judy was saying, that how are we going to approach this market-driven process? For a lot of the participants, when we talk to them and their families and carers, they were actually quite excited, which we were quite surprised about. And I've put this slide up here from Henry Ford, that whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're absolutely right. And so what we wanted to do was create a space in the consultation process, moving towards NDIS, where participants could absolutely put down a wish list of things that they wanted to see the organisation do differently, and to really think about what they wanted their customer experience to be all about. And I guess for all of us in the room, at some time or other in our life, we are clients of a particular service, or we're customers of a particular service as well. And the participants, some of them actually saw themselves with their families as now going to be buying the service from this organisation rather than just receiving it. So I'll tell you a little bit about what the project covers. I guess moving this project onwards is over a 2 or 3 year period. However, Focal was well and truly behind the 8 ball. Why? Because what we found across Queensland was a lot of organisations, the smaller ones, have been swallowed up by the larger ones, and we talked a little bit about that yesterday. Focal decided, as a provider of these services, that it would actually touch base with some larger organisations and see if they could amalgamate. And what we found was that some of the larger organisations that said, yes, we want to take you on board with us and come under our banner, when we actually got down to the nitty-gritty, some of the concerns that we have been raising over these 2 days is that they wanted to lose the person-centred approach that Focal was offering. The question is why, when they actually offer person-centred practice and services anyway? One of the reasons is, in one large organisation, was that because staff often spent far too much time with participants, they actually tried to be extremely flexible. And so to get that efficiency, the larger organisations wanted to change the way that Focal was delivering its services. So in the end, what has happened is the board have decided not to amalgamate with a larger organisation, but to actually look for other like-minded agencies to partner with. In terms of the risks, that is quite risky moving towards the NDIS because the organisation is quite small. But what it has decided to do is to become a boutique service and to really market that in the local community so that all the participants will want to stay with the organisation moving towards NDIS, and they actually want to aim to pick up another 200 families in the local area. And I think that's achievable over a 2 or 3 year period. So the project included, we actually held a whole range of forums over a longer period of time, about 3-month period, and that was with carers, with families, participants, a mixture of carers, families, participants. We met with staff, and we also met with a whole range of stakeholders in the community in the Ipswich area and also outside the area. We also met with some of Focal's competitors, which I must say was very interesting as well. We had strategy weekends with the board and with staff, which was absolutely amazing. And I've got a picture for you. Actually, I'll show you now. This was a really tough weekend, as you can see, at this absolutely amazing place in the middle of nowhere, where we actually sat for 2 or 3 days at a time over a series of 4 or 5 strategy weekends, where we brought in staff, guest speakers, the board, etc., to really think about an innovative and positive way to move towards the NDIS. I guess, Judy, as you were saying, because we're all struggling a little bit with how it's going to work. We're at the point now where we're actually going to develop a new service model, which is going to be radically different from whatever's been delivered before. And by that, what I mean is that participants will want to have services that are not 9 to 5. Participants will want to have services that are Saturday and Sunday. One of the most amazing stories we heard from a young woman about 25 was she jumped up and down with absolute delight, screaming her head off, saying, "Finally, I'll be able to go to a nightclub. Finally, I'll be able to go dancing at 1 o'clock in the morning if I want to. And you know what? Nobody's going to tell me that I can't, because I'm going to actually buy that service," which was really, really exciting. This project also included a plan to diversify the organisation, because the risk is with it being so small that if it doesn't think creatively and innovatively, it will get left behind. It owns 2 buildings, so what we're going to do is really look at leveraging the equity in those buildings to be able to then look at new ways to actually earn and go and leverage new money so that the organisation can continue to grow. The organisation is also looking at trying to meet with a couple of other organisations to amalgamate. And one organisation that it's really interested in has a series of buses where it transports its participants and clients around the community. And it's the only one of its kind in that community. So they're hoping to partner with that as well. The other thing that the organisation we're going to do is we have shifted, which I've got a slide for you shortly, we've changed all the staff role titles, and it's going to be all about the participant's lifestyle, and it's moving away from, I guess, some of the labels and the stigma that comes with some of those labels that community put around disability. We're looking at board governance, really shaking up the board governance process. We've designed a new structure, and so as you can imagine, moving to NDIS, all the staff were absolutely terrified that they were going to lose their role or their job. And so what the CEO has done very, very well has secured enough, funds in the bank so that the organisation, with what David was talking about yesterday, to transition to the NDIS, the organisation has about 2 years worth of money in the bank up their sleeve to be able to transition across, and they're going to need every single cent. They're going to rebrand, so they're going to freshen their brand, because when you actually freshen up the structure and you freshen up the brand, it's given staff hope and reinvigorated them moving towards the NDIS, that the organisation is right beside them. Of course, the organisation needs to move to a new costing model. We have to look at things like we talked about yesterday, marketing and IT. And what this organisation is looking at is that staff on the front line that are going to have to bring back the opportunities for participants if they need a particular service will be able to, they'll know what services in the future this organisation can offer. And even as far as the board thinking that if a participant would like to receive a service, for example, be transported somewhere, that they can actually pay for that service then and there if they would like to. So all staff will be having iPads moving out into the field, and of course the other thing the organisation needs to do is some of the tricky stuff is moving to a new accounting system, which is going to be quite tricky as well. So this is a picture of a couple of the board members on one of our strategy weekends looking at moving towards the NDIS. This organisation has a range of families on its board, and the other thing that it has just kicked off, which is really exciting, is a family advisory committee. So as many families as possible will now feed into new ideas of exactly what their family needs moving to the NDIS. This is a great photo of the chair, Roy, and he was really nervous about coming to the strategy weekends because he felt that whilst he had been the chair of the organisation for quite a few years, he felt that he wasn't quite sure how to lead the organisation into NDIS. So what he decided to do was bring along his naval hat, wear it for the whole weekend, and he wrote a poem about ships and being the captain of the ship, leading the HMAS Focal out into the stormy waters, and did an amazing job to lead the board through the weekend, telling them how he was going to captain the ship in uncharted waters. This is a photo of Sonia, the current CEO, as she had just come back from Vancouver to bring back her information from the conference that she had been to. And then the other big thing, even though you can't see probably the detail of this was a piece of work that we did looking at what are the values and I guess the mission of the organisation, and we changed it to have really creative language like laughter is our first language. Our team can take on any challenge that they're presented with. And so we really looked at 4 key different areas that were pillars of the organisation that it had been built on and founded on. And instead of having values and a mission that's quite traditional, we really shook it up a bit and then took that to the consultation forums with families and carers to see if it was language that they thought really fitted where the organisation needed to be. This is a picture of a great big ship. You probably can't see that very well either, but I guess that's going to be the metaphor moving into NDIS. And so the different parts of this big boat is going to represent each part of the organisation and the participants' families and carers that are at the centre of what the organisation's delivering. Another activity that we did over some of the strategy weekends was we got all the carers, families, participants, the staff, the board, to look at who are the existing families that actually come to this organisation, and then we actually looked at the refusing people. So this is a blue ocean tool that we use, where who are those people that might actually access Focal's services but probably won't come on board for whatever reason. And then we looked at who are the people in the community that probably need Focal services that haven't even been thought of yet. And that's going to be the key area to support this organisation moving towards NDIS so it can be sustainable in the transition process. Just skip that one. And then we did this activity, which you probably can't see very well, but what we did was we actually mapped the organisation and the amazing things that it has to offer in relation to some of the other organisations in the community, and that also gave the board and the organisation a lot of hints on how to transition to NDIS as well. We then looked at Focal from today and into tomorrow, and we've actually come up with a whole range of new services that the organisation can offer, which is really exciting. One of the services this organisation offers is after-school care support for children who experience a disability, and it's the only one of its kind in Brisbane. So the organisation had never thought about expanding that service, so because of NDIS really forcing them to think about what other services they could provide, what they've decided to do is expand that service, which is really exciting because there's always a huge wait list for parents in that area. Just moving forward so that I can wrap up. When we actually sat with families and carers, we asked them a whole range of questions, and I just wanted to share with you some of the things that they fed back. that Focal goes out of their way for us, that they're very flexible and they have a really, really huge passion. They've got a really big heart. And that participants and families wanted more services and a more diverse range of services. A lot of families, as you can imagine, are feeling very concerned that they'll be worse off under an NDIS. They don't know what the changes will mean for them. They hope that it will allow the organisation to grow bigger and offer more things, and they don't know again what will happen to them. And they would like more information and to be told what will it mean for families. This is a picture of, I guess one of the reasons I titled this presentation Colouring a New Landscape is because everything that we have done in this project to support Focal has been about colour. And so it's really important moving to NDIS in supporting a transition process that you do have lots of fun along the way and there is lots of colour, because it's going to be a pretty tough road for a lot of people. So what we decided to do, as I mentioned before, was to change the look of the structure. So we actually put all the roles, which is a bit difficult to see, in colour in a traditional way that you actually present a structure. And then what we did was this. We actually moved the structure to be circular. And interestingly, when Sonia's talked about this with a whole range of stakeholders, they're actually very excited. Why? Because we've actually changed the colours of the organisation, we've actually made it circular, and with the client, customer, consumer right at the centre of the service, which is really fantastic. So that no matter what the organisation does across any of its services or how it operates, it really has under the NDIS the families, carers and participants right at the centre of the heart of what they do. And then the 4 key areas that they've really focused on is growth, expansion, leveraging, so sharing efficiencies with other partners, and executing. So always to be in an innovation space so that they can actually compete with the larger organisations, considering that they're quite small moving into an NDIS. So that's kind of the visual that we have in the organisation. And I guess in summary, what does this mean for professionals? Well, we need to really think about how all our roles, and particularly as Judy was saying under PIR, because we work with a lot of PIR staff across the country really, and that how across mental health and disability that all our roles are going to link to NDIS. How are we going to progress to this funny word, marketised sector, and how are we going to operate in that and thrive? What we found in Queensland is that a lot of organisations in the shift to NDIS are actually bringing in business people for senior roles. And one thing that Focal, being so small, has really had to think about is what other roles does it need to have in its structure, or what services does it buy in, because it needs to be able to think heart and head and that business mindset as well. The importance of professional supervision, because that is one of the most efficient and better ways that staff can get information, feel supported and feel valued during a very, very uncertain time. And the challenges that an organisation like this is making from being the old traditional welfare model to a business model, and how do you hold on to the welfare and community services model, is something that this organisation continues to grapple with. A change in mindset about practice, and a big change to case management and how that's delivered. And just to show you a beautiful picture of near where I live on the Brisbane Moreton Bay, moving from Tassie, you can't kind of move to Queensland without being by the water. So thank you for listening, and hope you got something out of that.